Good evening, and welcome to the round 2 of the Classic Cinema Challenge. Now, if you don't know what it is, I'm going to give you a quick, brief explanation. For the next 30 minutes, my guests and myself will be talking about 3 really bad movies. Then we're going to instruct you or ask you to go over to our Survey Monkey and vote on which one you think is worst. We did this previously about a month ago, and Zardos came on top. So tonight's movies are Battlefield Earth, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, and They Saved Hitler's Brain. My name is Garen Daly, and I am the festival director for the Boston Science Fiction Film Festival, and I'm really pleased to introduce to you our guests, Carol Murphy and Jay Michaels. Carol is the founder of FIG, and Jay is a man about town who is a horror historian. And Carol, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what you do and why it's important that you are here tonight?
Sure. So I am the executive director of Boston FIG, which is a nonprofit that supports indie game creation. And we're really trying to foster the next generation of game creators. So we have our first virtual fest. We virtualized this year, coming up on January 16th. So we wanted to let folks know about that and invite you to join us on our Discord server and get ready as we prepare for the fest.
Cool. And Jay, why don't you let folks know what you're doing these days?
Thank you. I'm a professor of communications and a producer of my own video series and podcast exploring independent artists on stage, screen, and literature. And actually, we are turning these programs into a full-scale channel. Channel I will eventually be running as of January 2021, and it will spotlight all forms of independent artists. That's on film, that's in theater, and that's also in literature. And yes, I'm a horror historian. For decades, I've been following and analyzing horror and sci-fi films for their significance. I'm writing a book called The Monsters Are Us, and it's about the socio-political ramifications in even the tiniest or worst horror film. Now, I don't know all the films, but I am working on it.
Thanks. So let's take a gander at our first film. It is from either 1963 or 1968. We can get into that in a second. It's called They Saved Hitler's Brain. And Colby, our director, will now place a clip for you guys to watch. Oh, we seem to think we don't have the clip here. Oh, we have audio on it. And there we go.
In the diabolical minds of the madmen of Mandorus was created the most incredible plot ever conceived to conquer the world.
Why did you bring us here, really? In a matter of hours, we will begin the conquest of the world.
Phil Day, undercover agent, trapped in the trap he set for the madmen of Mandorus. Professor Coleman, American scientist, believed his staggering discovery to be a secret.
Up to now, anthraquinone was the only known antidote. The loss or destruction of the formula for this antidote would mean complete annihilation of the world.
But he did not reckon with a group of evil men who will permit nothing to stop their rule of the world. What unknown force has been created to conquer the world? And which of the madmen pushed the panic button?
Somebody's got to get Borak. I guess it's up to me, Casey.
I was wondering whether you just said someone's got to get Borat, but that's not the case. One of the things that's missing here is Hitler's brain. And Jay, why don't you explain to our listeners why that is?
Well, I think he's coming. I think the Führer is coming. What happened with this film in 1968, that's when the Universal horror films were being shown on television. And there he is. There he is himself in all the glorious special effects. In 1968, they were putting the horror films on television. And but they had to be a certain length. That's also the creation of the horror host, because they needed someone to stall for time during commercials and things like that. And so what they needed, this film was too short. So they, in 1968, filmed 20 minutes more of this film and attached it to a 1963 film. Now, you don't have to look too close to see the mustaches, the clothing, the styles, even the music. So you could see we go from this sort of noirish 1963 to this 1968 sort of film. It made it long enough and it was able to be put on television. It also made it an absolutely terrible and confusing film. And as much as you think these two characters are leads, they had to be killed off because they had nothing to do with the rest of the film. And they were killed off in lovely stock footage of cars crashing.
Well, that's one of the things I think we can really appreciate about this film is their delightful use of stock footage. It's really up there with some of the best out there.
Delightful use of stock footage.
Carol, had you seen this film before?
No, this was the first time I watched this film.
And how did it hit you when the full brunt of that cinematic treasure hit you in the face?
I mean, well, I was just so impressed with the use of stock footage that, I mean, what's there really to say beyond that? Like, wow, incredible use of stock. But no, I think that this film was truly insane. So I'm looking at these things from like trying to assess what we mean by bad. Like, what's the worst movie? What's bad? And I think that this story, when it comes to narrative, is I don't want to like call it right now, but I think it's the worst of the bunch narratively.
Oh, no.
I see you disagree, Jay.
Well, that's the idea. We want to have a nice, viable conversation here. I mean, obviously, when you put two completely different films together and make it one, and it's purely about commercialism. It's purely trying to fill a void out there. There's no auteur involved in this at all. So it's just thrown together. I mean, one of the things I read was, and Jay, you might be able to help me with this, was that the 20 minutes that they put together was done by UCLA students. Did you hear that?
You could see that. I didn't know whether it was UCLA, but I knew it was student footage. I knew they got it as cheaply as possible and as fast as possible. You could see in the costume, you could see in the dialogue, you could see it's people's homes, and it's not even the same location. So you don't even get the sense that they're in the same region for the film. And Kara, with all due respect, I got a kick out of this movie. It is terrible, but it's terrible in a Plan 9 sort of way. Let's listen to them play bongos and suddenly dance in the middle of it, and just to see the bad special effects of Hitler's head in a jar.
Yeah.
I have a criteria for a terrible movie. There's 4 kinds of terrible horror movie. Mm-hmm. There's the valiant effort, and that's things like your Waterworld, your Zardoz, even. Okay. There's the quick and dirty, which is what this is. Okay, it's black and white. Come on, what do we got? We got stock footage of an elephant sleeping. Put it in here, which they did. So you could still laugh at that movie. Then you got the funny movie, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then you got the real pathetic, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But this is a terrible movie, but you come away laughing. You come away saying, look at that stock footage. That's Hitler's head. And are we going to, there it is.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my gosh.
Yep. Let's take the mannequin and burn it.
Poor Bill Fried. He's the man who starred as the head.
Oh my God.
But one of the things I love to do with movies like this is to read and go after their taglines. And the taglines for "They Saved Hitler's Brain" was the most incredible plot to conquer the world. And Carol, as you said, there is
incredible
no plot.
Is correct. Yeah, it's there's like 15 characters who don't matter. That there's no reason that they're there. They kill off the 2 leads in the first 20 minutes because of the aforementioned reasons, and then they introduce new lead characters, one of whom's only job is to be a wife, and then remains her only job throughout the film. At one point, she has the glorious moment of attacking her husband by accident. And this is narratively the most interesting thing about her. Basically that's true of all the other women characters in the entire film. Like they are there inconsequentially or to do things in support of the male characters having moments like where a man gets kissed by a woman who's not his wife scandalously. So there's just so much.
That's 1968 right there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of view it with the kindness of the lens of now, knowing that was the time.
Oh, but I used
You
to
can
have
even
a
see they
Ford like that.
grayscaled there. Yeah. You can even see they grayscaled it there. Everyone got kidnapped in this, which I found hilarious.
So
Everyone
many
at
people
some
get
point got
kidnapped.
kidnapped. There are two moments that I love. One, the scientist that we saw with the mustache gets kidnapped. But he doesn't ask the kidnapper anything. What? You've taken my daughter? Okay. And he hangs up on him. I'm not asking where. Where are you going? That and
He's just fine with it.
Oh, of course. And then there's a moment where one of the guards or one of the people there is going, Mein Führer, we will help you. We will make sure that your glorious kingdom. Da, 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 da. And Hitler's brain in there looks and goes, Mach schnell. Now, we got two things that I was working on.
Wait a minute a second. But that's the only thing that Hitler says
Completely.
throughout the entire thing. Mach schnell. That's it. That's it. He has such a great vocabulary.
They didn't even print this script. What made me laugh was the guy was speaking to him in English, and Hitler answered in German. Hello? And then,
Anyway,
okay, my biology class. How do you breathe?
I think we agree it's a pretty horrible film.
Yeah.
Okay. The next film that's on our list is one of those classic Hollywood vanity projects gone amok. And it's called Battlefield Earth. It was produced and driven by the main star, John Travolta. And let's take a gander at this. This is, again, one of those lousy films.
When we attacked your planet, all your soldiers and all their advanced technology could only put up a measly 9-minute fight, which is why man is an endangered species. There's nothing that will help you.
Once we finish mining out this miserable little planet, let's do the universe a favor. Let's exterminate a lot of them.
If we don't take back our planet, the last of humanity becomes extinct.
So I think you get a sense of what this film is about with this trailer. It's a vanity project. It's when Travolta was at his peak of drawing power, and he prevailed upon Warner Brothers to underwrite this film. And Carol, why don't you take the lead on this one? What do you think?
So this film takes itself very seriously, and it's basically like, as far as I can tell, it's a libertarian's like fantasy of like the hero's journey, but through a libertarian lens, where they're gonna like take down all the corporate evil guys. But that said, the production quality is really very high. They spent a lot of money on it. The costuming is really, really good. The acting is not bad. The acting is pretty good in places. And yeah, there's a lot to actually like about it. I found myself more like the most engaged by this one. Like, I found it watchable, It wasn't like I was sitting there excruciatingly bored being like, oh gosh, something should happen now. Like, something's always happening. So it's not terrible. It's just not good.
Well, I think part of the problem that when it came out, everyone knew that it was based on L. Ron Hubbard's book. And
Right.
L. Ron Hubbard, when he started off, was a science fiction writer. And then he shifted over to Scientology for the express purpose of not being able, so he didn't have to pay taxes and create something that was really wonderful for him.
Right.
And so that libertarian thing, that thread that you're finding in there, I think represents that Scientology piece. Jay, what do you think?
Yeah.
I said there were 4 kinds of bad horror movie. This is the 4th, and for me, this is the worst. They didn't care. They had the money, they had the star power, they had everything. But Travolta and Franchise Pictures decided it was going to be an ode to Scientology, if you will. And so they did not care if the audience was going to understand it. There are so many tragic flaws in this, it made me gasp. Yes, it's visually interesting until you realize they have mastered the planet for 1,000 years, yet buildings are still standing. There's still planes that can fly. There's still gassed up cars after 1,000 years. Also, firstly, the name of the aliens are called the Cyclos. Sorry. Now, how is it that after 1,000 years of them being the race that killed us off in 9 minutes, they didn't realize that Fort Knox is where we kept the gold? The whole point of this movie is they want gold and they don't know where it is. And so what do? They train a surfer dude to know how to fly their planes, to work their machinery, to understand their code, to find the gold. Instead, what does he do? He takes a gassed up plane for 1,000 years sitting there, and he conquers them. It's like a high school show. It's like if you sat down in a really expensive high school and said, do a play. This is what they would do. And the fact that they didn't care, and the fact that there was larceny involved, Franchise Pictures was sued, they went bankrupt, they elevated their budget to bilk the investors. They didn't care what the audience thought. They didn't care what the finance people thought. They just cared what John Travolta thought. And I'm sorry, he's famous as a dancer. He's famous as a cool cutting edge actor and all of that. When he sits there and goes, I was bred to conquer universes. You are not Ian McKellen. You are not Patrick Stewart. Stop trying to do. And why do they look like Klingons? Why is it a Star Wars knockoff with Star Trek makeup? For me, this is the one. This is
well, I think one of the things that I didn't like about it is that I thought their casting choices were a little off. I mean, I liked Barry Pepper as an actor, but to have him be in the role that he was in, I just don't think he had the gravitas to be able to pull that. If you're going to find a hero in the hero's journey that we talked a little bit about before, have a hero that you're going to, feel comfortable with. I mean, he just seemed like a surfer dude.
Thank you.
Total surfer dude is what I named him in my mind while I was watching, and I was like, "Hey, surfer dude's back."
He had the nasal voice. He had the nasal voice. Come on, we gotta save the planet. You got the money. Find somebody who was trained.
Yeah, it must really appeal to the Scientology audience.
Yeah. So anyway,
just be a really mediocre man.
Wow.
And if you go back to, I mean, I remember when this film came out because I'm that old. But and I was in the industry, and everyone was talking about, oh my God, this is a vanity project. Oh, it's the biggest bomb and everything. And I do think that has tarnished it. But it now is literally considered one of the worst films of all time. And I don't think you can ever get beyond that unless Scientology takes over the world. And in which case, we're doomed anyways.
See, that's the thing. Hitler's Brain you can watch and laugh at, and you could say, oh, how stupid. So at least there's some entertainment. Here, it's like, I don't know how many times I sat there and just went, what? Wait a minute. But it's 1,000 years. What do you mean? I was too busy being confused to watch the movie.
See, this is the kind of stupid that I can get on board with, though. Whereas with Hitler's Brain, I found myself bored. I was just like bored for long stretches of time. And like, that's the worst thing to me in a film.
Carol, Carol, you're much younger than I am, and I don't mean to cast ageism into this mix, but is it? I mean, do you like black and white films to begin with? I mean,
absolutely. Ones that are good. Okay. Maltese Falcon's one of my favorite films, like top 5 favorite films.
That's a movie. That's a movie.
Exactly. Because it has good pacing, it has excellent characters, it has really, really great narrative design, just overall, like it's a wonderful film. Like, I cannot say that about Hitler's Brain.
Really? I'm shocked to hear you say that. Shocked.
It really says something that the movie was too short to be on television, but you're bored with it.
But I was bored.
That says everything about the movie. Yeah.
Exactly.
I also saw when I remember the first time I saw it, I kept saying, "This is the perfect C film for a drive-in triple feature."
Yes. Yes.
So.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to our third contestant. And by the way, if you're watching this and you're wondering how to vote, we want to send you over to our Survey Monkey, and it's really a simple 1, 2, 3. Pick the one you want. We'll announce the loser sometime in the near future or in the next couple of days. And then in December, we will have our final third round of films. And then in January, we'll take our 3 losers and pit them against each other, where we will then announce the worst film according to our experts and our votes at the 46th Annual Boston Science Fiction Film Festival in February. But our next film is Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. All right. Now, I have a little problem with this one because I think it's a parody. And as a parody, it expands the parameter, the definition of bad. But let's take a look at some of the wonderful footage from Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Off to the rescue. So, wait, look, this film was designed, I mean, it came out in, 1978. It's directed by John Bellow. It was designed to be a spoof of B movies. And so there's a lot of intentional ripping off and a lot of homages to other bad films. I have to wonder whether or not that makes it eligible to be in our list. Jay, why don't you start off with that? Because you seem to relish this one. I assume that's tomato relish.
Well done. Very well done. I loved this film.
Jay seemed to have frozen there for a second. Carol, why don't you pick it up?
Oh, I've got it. I've got Jay on.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm here.
All right. It was just my camera then.
That's okay. I love this film, and you could see when a movie is an unintentional parody, like Plan 9 from Outer Space. You know, he tried to do a real movie, and it didn't work. But here, there is musical numbers that are choreographed. The first line of the film shows you it's a parody when he says, "Houston, we have a problem." The tomatoes all going, it is meant to be this joke of the B movies, of the monster coming from the sea sort of movie. It is meant to be funny. You almost get a Bollywood feel from it because there's music, there's romance, there's drama, there's horror, there's everything all in this one great big movie. It's very funny. You come away really laughing at this movie. Little things like she's eating a box of cereal and what's it called? Steroids. There's so many points where you just say, okay, this is a takeoff. There we go. This was a well-rehearsed mistake, if you will. It's funny enough that you can enjoy it. It's almost like the last Sharknado. It's like it's so well done that you really laugh and get into it. A movie like this, I wouldn't call this a bad movie. I would call this an exquisite parody. This is up there with Army of Darkness and so many others that just say, okay, we're making fun of movies. And I got no problem with this movie at all.
Carol?
I largely agree. The kinds of vibes I got from this was it felt very inspired by Mel Brooks and films like Airplane. It felt very much like there was a gag that I laughed so hard at, like all the men climbing into this teeny little room and having to climb over the desk to get into these chairs. I was in stitches about that. And the whole film has a lot of really great moments like that. Oh, this clip. Oh my God. It's still funny.
This clip is their takeoff on the stateroom scene from a Marx Brothers movie.
Correct.
Oh.
That's what I mean. It's brilliant in its satire. So
yeah, I don't think this is a bad film.
Nope.
Exactly.
That's when we did our initial survey of films that we wanted to include in this. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes came up a lot as a really bad film. And I agree. And I'm glad you brought up the Mel Brooks, because what Jay was saying about, the dancing and the choreography and all that stuff could be said about a lot of the Mel Brooks films,
Absolutely.
Of course.
Yeah. So, I guess the question that we go, and you kind of related this earlier, Jay, how do we define bad? And where do we start off with? Where do we start with the definition?
For me, it's always, if a movie is bad, if you're going to call something bad, it's because it was trying to be good and failed. You could say Hitler's Brain is bad because they tried to be good. They tried to then make it something else and it failed. You could say Battlefield Earth is way bad because, again, vanity or no, they were trying to make a high budget thing. It is obvious here they were trying and succeeding in doing exactly what they got. I don't think the producers and the director were unhappy 1 minute. I don't think they looked at it and disavowed any knowledge of it. I think they said, this is what we were going for. So can we say we don't like the movie? There are people who can do that. And when it first came out in 1978, we weren't into making parodies of horror movies yet necessarily. So maybe it didn't work with the culture. But it was a fun movie. It's hilarious. You may not like it, but I don't know if I'd want to call it bad.
Are you saying that Attack of the Killer Tomatoes was ahead of its time?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Wow.
Think about it. Think the Scary Movie. If you watch any of the Scary Movies, the parodies, when you look at any, Carol, as you said perfectly, the Mel Brooks movies, it's the same thing. Okay, the filming is not great, and the tomatoes obviously are great big plush toys and whatever else, but it's hilarious, and they're trying very hard. When you really get down to it, it's the forerunner on a lot of things. Think about the sounds the tomatoes are making. How different is that than watching any episode of The Walking Dead where you see these zombies coming at you and they're going, "Arr, arr, arr, arr." In so many ways, they set the tone for so many other kinds of movies. And they, in turn, like I said about the Marx Brothers film, like I said about some of their lines, even something as silly as that scene right there, it's a statement as to the intelligence of where they were going. If you look at any of the characters behind there, it's a full statement. You have every kind of Hollywood character. There's the Marx Brothers, just in case. You got all of this so that you do nothing but laugh. This is to make you laugh at horror movies.
Is it also one of those things where people are showing off their chops about knowing film and then dropping in the Marx Brothers, dropping in all these other references that we hadn't seen before? Completely.
What they did was they put in enough Easter eggs that the film students, the horror historians, and everyone else in between is going to say, that's from that movie. Wait, that's a quote from that movie. So we get to enjoy it, but it makes it that much funnier for the regular audience member who just wants to see it. They were definitely showing off their chops on so many levels with this, and they succeeded.
Well, folks, if you're dropping in and watching us, please go to our Survey Monkey and let us know what you think. Is it going to be Battlefield Earth? Is it going to be Attack of the Killer Tomatoes? Or is it going to be They Saved Hitler's Brain as the worst film in round 2 of the Classic Cinema Challenge? And we're going to wrap up here. There is our Classic Cinema Challenge bracketing there. So tonight, again, it's a Battlefield Earth, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, and They Saved Hitler's Brain. Please vote at our Survey Monkey. And then on December 9th, we're going with Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, starring the lovely Pia Zadora, Batman and Robin with its nipples, and Leonard Part 6 with someone who is in jail right now. And then you can see on January 13th, we will put them all together for one last blowout. Carol, before we leave, do you want to give one last plug for your event?
Oh yeah, sure. I was also going to tell everyone, write in Prometheus. Prometheus is the worst sci-fi horror. Okay. Yes. January 16th, come to Boston Fig Fest. We're going to have a virtual exhibition where you can walk around in like a little RPG type environment. It's going to be super cool. We have live streams going on. We've got a Discord server with free play, and it should be really, really fun. So hopefully see you there. So,
Carol, what does FIG actually stand for?
Festival of Indie Games.
Okay, cool. Cool.
Yeah.
And Jay, I know you've always got something up your sleeve. What do you got working?
Oh my goodness. Right now I'm in the middle of hosting Phoenix FearCon. They're a film festival that's running to December 31. You can go online to phoenixfearcon.com. I'm going to be working with the Horror Springs Horror Film Festival as well. And my channel, Channel I, which is going to feature my video program called In the Passion Pit, which talks to independent artists. Another program called Nocturnes, which talks to horror movie performers, and we're also going to be talking to theater artists and literary people. For right now, you can get information on it at my website, J Michaels Arts, JayMichaelsArts.com, J Michaels Arts. Go to that first page, and you'll learn all about the impending channel dedicated to the independent artist.
You did that so well. You're a professional, aren't you?
Well, thank you.
Anyways, my name is Garen Daly. I'm the festival director for Boston Sci-Fi. Our festival this year will be a virtual film festival. It'll be running from February 10th to the 15th. We're scaling it back a little bit. And we have no less than 4 virtual platforms to be able to pull this off. And we can start announcing some of our films. One of the first films that we will be doing will be a premiere of Kubrick by Kubrick. This is a documentary film by Michael Cement. I think I got that right without blowing it too bad, where he interviewed Stanley Kubrick over a period of 20 years, saved all the audio, and then put all the audio together with clips and interviews with other people like Malcolm McDowell and from his films. So you get a really in-depth look at this incredible artist. We've got other films coming down the pike, and you should go to bostonsci-fi.com. Find us on Facebook, find us on Instagram, and you can keep up to speed with what we got going. Carol Murphy, Jay Michaels, thank you so much for joining. This was a lot of fun. I laughed. I had a good time. I don't care about anybody else. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. It was great.
Thank you.
And for everyone who listened in, thank you for joining us. Have a good night.